Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. I just got back from the Footprint Center here in Phoenix, where the Lakers lost for the first time this season, dropping to 3-1 with a 109-105 loss to the Suns, who they actually just played on Friday in another close game. It's the fourth time these two teams have matched up. If you guys can't see, or I guess you can, I don't have my typical camera quality right now, but I'm hoping the mic sounds good. Shout out to everybody that is up in the chat right now, late night gang. But a lot to talk about with LA's first loss, and I want to start with, I'm already seeing it in the chat, but the biggest thing for me was JJ Redick taking accountability. And this was something that did not happen often under the previous regime. This was something that bothered players and Lakers staffers. This was a factor in the decision to move on from Darvin Ham. If you go on Lakers Twitter or Lakers Reddit, you will see all the memes and all the previous tweets and quotes, some coming from me of documenting what Darvin was saying, but it was always someone else's fault or some kind of excuse or explanation as to why it was not the coaching staff's fault, why it was not his fault specifically. And I thought that JJ handled the first question of just what went wrong tonight, like, where did you guys lose this game? And he took accountability. He said that if he was going to nitpick something, that it was on him, and that he felt that he could have done a better job late in the game, firing against Kevin Durant, which is their term for blitzing. So sending two toward the ball and being more aggressive and trying to get the ball out of his hands instead of switching. And that allowed Phoenix to manipulate the matchups and constantly target Gabe and D'Lo and even Max at times with Kevin Durant, and he was able to just shoot over those guys, or even Devin Booker at times as well. Both guys dropped a combined 63 points. So JJ took accountability on that, and then he also took accountability for the Lakers' 14-point second quarter, which is really where this game flipped. They get off to arguably, in my opinion, the best stretch of basketball they've played all season. And I include that like end of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter against the Kings, because that to me was more just ridiculous shot making from LeBron. LeBron went on a scorcher. He went supernova and he took over that game. So while, yes, that was impressive, and yes, technically they had a 21-0 run, the Lakers opened this game with a 26-8 lead about 7 minutes into the game. And to me, this was like the best basketball we had seen them play. AD was dominant. They were feeding him the ball constantly, running everything through him, revolving everything around him. You had Rui really stepping up, and he had several buckets, and he had a block. And like defensively, they already had 3 blocks in the first 6 minutes. And it just felt like they were controlling the game and dominating the game. And then from that point on, Phoenix went on their own run. So they cut it to 9 to end the first quarter, and then kept on that run through the first half and actually took a 2-point lead into halftime. So that was a major swing. And a big part of that was that 14-point second quarter for the Lakers. And JJ owned that. And he said that it was on him for the type of offense that they were running. And he felt like they were getting stagnant, and he could have run better sets. He could have called better things. So like already we've seen honestly probably more accountability from JJ Redick in one loss than Darvin Ham ever took. Like, and even if he did, it would be more so about like the group, or like he never really took it. And look, I was at essentially every Darvin Ham press conference for all 2 years. I did miss a couple of weeks right after I tore my Achilles last year. But I also had access to the quote sheet. We have a transcription group with the beat writers, and we transcribe all the players and the head coach when they talk in each availability. So we have this giant file with all the quotes from the season, and I was keeping up with it, and I never saw that to my recollection. That was always something that stood out because it felt like there were those games, those moments where Darvin could have fell on the sword. And even if you don't believe it, like, one, you should believe it, because if you have any self-awareness or a certain level of self-awareness rather, like, you could be doing something better, especially in a loss. So that's just like, I think, coaching 101 stuff. But it just, he never took that accountability, and I don't know if he felt insecure about his job, and obviously that ended up playing out that way. But for whatever reason, he never did that. And JJ has already done that throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, but now he did it for the first time after this loss. And you could just tell the more he was talking about the game, the more pissed he was getting. And multiple players, we spoke with LeBron, AD, Austin, and Rui after the game, and everyone to a man said, I'm in Phoenix right now. Everyone to a man said that JJ was just pissed, and that JJ, I think I forgot if it was Austin or AD, might have been, I want to say Austin said that JJ dropped an F-bomb in his post-game kind of debrief with the group, and that everyone was talking about how upset he was and how nice that was to see, and how he took accountability with the group. It wasn't just something that he did publicly as lip service, but also he took accountability, with them. And then he also expressed his frustration of this was a very winnable game for the Lakers. So not only do they have the 18-point first quarter lead, but they actually take back control of the game in the third quarter, go into the fourth quarter with a 7-point lead. And once again, that group to start the fourth, which was the same group that started the second quarter, allows a big run. Phoenix opens the fourth with a 14-3 run to take back. I think they had a 4-point lead at that point. And from then on, Phoenix was basically in the driver's seat in this game. And so, I mean, a lot went wrong for LA, and I will touch on LeBron. I think that is worth talking about with my next takeaway. But I think in the grand scheme of things, LA had 3 close competitive games to start the season. They beat 3 good teams and started 3-0. But when you factor in winning a couple of those close games, especially against Phoenix and Sacramento on a back-to-back, and then this game, I feel like 3-1 feels about like the right record. And obviously every game matters in the Western Conference, especially against teams in the West, and especially against teams in your division who you're going to play 4 times and have those divisional tiebreakers with, and another team that the Lakers are playing in the NBA Cup in the Suns. But it does kind of feel like the way that the Lakers have played up to this point, they easily could have been 4-0, but they also could have been 2-2 and dropped the first game to the Suns, or the second, or the second night of a back-to-back to the Kings. So it feels like 3-1 based on their performance through the first 4 games is right. Now, technically, again, they could be 4-0, and I'm sure they'd prefer that, but I feel like given some of the weaknesses we've seen with the bench, with LeBron's play outside of that stretch in the Sacramento stretch, with the transition defense, with the perimeter defense in general, it feels like 3-1 is about where this group should be. And even with some of the things that went wrong tonight, again, they were a missed shot away from potentially going to overtime and potentially winning this thing. So I mean, that to me, like, the biggest thing was like the mood with this group was they were not satisfied with losing the game. They were all pissed off. They also, though, kept, I felt like a good perspective of there were a lot of positives. And again, that 26-8 stretch to me was arguably the best stretch that they've played this season. It was certainly the best start to a game this season. But also, I mean, I think, again, looking at it, only 11 turnovers. So that's a successful game in terms of taking care of the ball. 11 offensive rebounds. They ended up taking 7 more field goal attempts than the Suns, so they were winning the possession battle, which is something that JJ's really been keying in on to start the season, and that's something that LA did not do a lot of last year. So I feel like you don't want to, there's no such thing as a silver lining necessarily in a loss. In my opinion, there's no such thing as like, a moral victory, especially for this group, who has clearly played really well to start the season and has a certain standard of play. But I actually feel like they played a relatively solid game. The bench was a disaster, and I will touch on that a little bit later. LeBron had his worst shooting performance since 2007 on Halloween, so it was almost exactly 17 years ago. And even despite that, they lost by 4, and again, it was a one-possession game going down the stretch. So I don't want to, for me, if you guys have been following me for a bit now, I like to keep the big picture. I don't like to overreact either way. This is a tough loss for LA because they probably should have won this game based on Phoenix never even led by double digits. Like, LA was in control for a lot of this game, but they had some really rough bench stretches, and it's something they're going to have to figure out. I do think they're going to have to tweak the bench rotation at some point. But all things considered, 3-1. This is a pretty good Phoenix team. They're now 3-1 as well. And I don't, well, it is a bad loss. I'm not going to mince words. Like, I do think in a way there's a chance that this causes the Lakers to reflect on some of the things that have been already going wrong within the first 3 games, including some of the bench lineups, some of the bench performers. And just, I do think that the rotation needs to be rejiggered a bit because they've had some, like, a lot of lineups have either performed really well or really poorly, and I don't think they've quite figured out the best lineup combinations to kind of keep the valleys and the dips within games not as low as they've been, because it really has been like this stark contrast game to game where you'll just see, like, the starters play well, then the bench comes in and they don't play well. Or it was the opposite against Sacramento, where that Dalton-led bench lineup performed really well, but then all the other lineups really struggled. But that lineup was a plus 31 in 9 minutes, and that was what won the Lakers the game. So it's like, I think they gotta, and you're gonna have wild vacillations week to game to game, week to week, but I do think in general, LA is still kind of figuring out its rotation, even though clearly JJ has a plan and sort of his configurations that he wants to go with. And he did, to his credit, tweak the rotation a little bit tonight. But I think he's going to have to continue to tweak it moving forward. Second thing for me was LeBron. And LeBron had an uncharacteristic off night. That's my second takeaway. And again, worst shooting performance since 2007 on Halloween. He was 3 for 14. Was actually at risk of breaking his double-digit scoring streak. He's the all-time leader with right now currently 1,226 consecutive games with double-digit scoring, and he was down to 7 until he hit a 3 with 2 minutes left in this game. And based on the way he had been shooting, when that shot went up, I did not think that was going to go in. I thought he was going to take it because it was a good shot. I didn't think that was going to go in with the type of night he was having. So I was like, is this finally going to be the night? And at The Athletic, we had prepped like a news channel for it of the potential of just if this happens, we got to obviously write about it. So he gets to 10. He continues his unprecedented streak, but not a good, overall 11 points, 5 rebounds, did have 8 assists. I do think was playmaking well and still was able to be productive in that way. Similar to D'Lo, who I don't think had a great game, but also had 8 assists and was able to play make that way. But LeBron 3 for 14 again, 2 for 5 from 3, 3 for 6 from the free throw line. Now, one thing we learned after the game was LeBron was clearly sniffling. He had a hoarse voice, and he was a bit nasally when he was talking. So a reporter asked him if he how are you feeling? And he's like, I've felt better. They're like, how long have you been dealing with these symptoms? And he said since Friday. So I will say LeBron did seem sick on Saturday. I didn't notice it Friday, but it's something he could have picked up Friday just gotten those initial symptoms, and then it started to progressively get worse. Obviously, Jalen Hood-Schifino was recently dealing with an illness. I've been sick for almost 3 weeks now, and a lot of times I will get whatever is going around the locker room. Like when the team starts to get sick, that almost certainly means I will be getting sick with whatever they have because we're in such close proximity to one another. So I don't want to use that as an excuse. And to be clear, LeBron did not use that as an excuse. He was asked that by a reporter. So it wasn't like LeBron was like, oh, I had a poor shooting night tonight because, I was sick. But he did seem a bit off. And to have his worst shooting performance in almost 17 years or over 17 years, like that to me, I don't want to explain it solely with that. But I do like, so certainly I will say his shot selection and the decision making and in terms of some of the turnovers, he just kind of had this laissez-faire attitude where he just wasn't playing with urgency and verve. And I do wonder, and again, I'm not trying to overreact in either direction, but I do wonder with LeBron if maybe we're getting to the point where his floor is just a little bit lower. Because if we're being honest, like I would say he's only really had one good game to start the season. I think he's had good stretches and good moments, and he's closed games well. Like he's still in crunch time, and when you need him to execute, he's been good. And even tonight, that was a big three that he hit to make it a 1-point game with about 2 minutes left. So like he went to the free throw line and missed that second free throw, and the Lakers nearly got the ball. There was a scrum for it. It bounced right back toward him, but everyone was in the paint, and then it pops out. Phoenix gets it. They go to the free throw line and seal the game. But like I do think in like high stakes moments, LeBron has still looked like LeBron, and when he's needed to turn it on, he's been able to, but it hasn't really been for a full game. And again, even the Sacramento game, he kind of got off to a relatively slow start. He was playing better, but then he had that flurry to start the fourth and just basically put the Lakers ahead for good there. So I like, it's something to monitor. It's something to keep track of with LeBron in terms of is the floor for him a little bit lower, because this was the worst offensive game from like a shooting perspective I can remember from him. And again, statistically, it was the worst game in 17 years. But in terms of since I've been covering him, this is now my 5th year covering him, and I can't remember this type of offensive performance from him. So with all that said, I think for now, based on his track record, based on his unprecedented longevity, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and just say like, okay, this was certainly worse than the first 2 games. And this is just something that, moving forward, I don't expect, like, this will probably be his worst offensive performance of the season. I would be surprised if it wasn't. But if it's not, then that's obviously something that we have to factor in when we're talking about the Lakers as a championship contender or trying to work their way into the championship contention conversation, just because that whole premise is built on LeBron still being a top 15, top 12, top 10 guy. And for the record, I still think he is that type of guy. But obviously, he's not had that type of start to the season. So I don't know if it's effects of Team USA and the Olympics. And we saw it with Austin last year. He got off to a relatively slow start. It's been interesting because AD's almost had the opposite, where he's had 4 straight games with 29 plus and just been a monster and arguably the best player in the NBA. But also LeBron's almost 40 in year 22. So like some slippage or decline should be expected. It's just a matter of like to what degree is he slipping and declining, if at all. And maybe again, maybe it's 4 games. I don't want to, and I said it after the 3rd game, I didn't want to overreact, positively in that direction. I just said at that time, like people were saying LeBron's cooked, LeBron's declined, and I didn't agree with that. And even so, he's played much better than he did tonight. So I just want to say, like, I'm taking this as an uncharacteristic off night. I think he's going to probably have a big game in Cleveland. He always gets up for those games. He talked about what it's going to mean to be there with Bronny and just like how special that is, given Bronny being born there and Bronny growing up on that court and just around the Cleveland franchise. So like I expect LeBron always shows out in Cleveland. So I do think that will happen again, or that's the most likely outcome. But I just, it's something to track and monitor. Is like, what is LeBron looking like? Has he been sick for the last 3 games, and we can just kind of explain it away with that, or that's certainly affected him to some extent, and maybe he's no longer the superhuman who can kind of play through that, and maybe it affects him more. But I don't know. I'm just, it was obviously like, I mean, I'm not gonna like, he did not have a good game. He had a bad game, and I thought he was harmful at times. And because the rest of the bench wasn't really performing, the Lakers didn't really have another alternative to go to in terms of like, you know, it wasn't like there was another unit that they could have gone to that was playing well without LeBron. So they needed him to close. And again, he was part of them staying in the game late, but certainly an off night for LeBron, and one we're not accustomed to. And then the third thing for me was just you know, my biggest concern through the first 4 games right now currently is the Lakers bench. And tonight, 8 points on 3 for 10 shooting. So, and all 4 guys played 11 or more minutes. 2 of the guys played 19 or more minutes. And so like the 10 shots already, I feel like the bench has not really, it's been, I would say Gabe and Max have not found their footing offensively, have not figured out their role. And I don't put that solely on them. I also put that on the coaching staff. But both guys, I feel like, can sometimes play tentative. They're passing up semi-open shots, but then they're also sometimes forcing, you know, but then the next time it's like, well, I didn't take that last shot, so I'm going to try and pump, fake, and drive, or I am just going to drive, attack the closeout, and then now I'm running into a defender. We've seen Max, he actually didn't have a turnover technically tonight, but he did get blocked at the rim. You know, did get blocked a couple times. He's been dealing with some decision-making issues, and you know, he led the bench for 23 minutes, but was a minus 13, which actually wasn't even the worst mark off the bench. Dalton was also a minus 13 in only 11 minutes, and Jackson was a minus 18, team worst in 13 minutes. So, like, I thought Gabe hit a big 3 late in the third quarter, and I thought, like, he's become the closer over D'Lo for his defense, and I thought Gabe was effective defensively. He was a minus 5 in his 19 minutes, but the bench has been a bit of a mess, and at this point, I'm really only confident in, if I'm the Lakers, I'm really only confident in what I'm getting from the starters. And everyone, like, I mean, this was Dalton's worst game, and you could tell Phoenix was really game planning for him. That they're really locked in on him, and we're trying to. It was like, we're not letting this guy shoot. We saw what he did last time he was in our building in the preseason. But you know, Max, I thought had 4 fouls and continues to kind of pick up some ticky-tack fouls. I think defensively, he was in the right spots for the most part with KD and Devin Booker. Those guys just hit shots over him, and part of that's like his limitation as a 21-year-old defender. Part of that's just like those 2 dudes are maybe top 3 to top 5 like pull-up jump shooters in the league, right? So it's kind of a combination of, I do like JJ ultimately said he felt that Kevin Durant and Devin Booker just hit a bunch of tough 2s against them. And if you look at the box score, KD was 9 for 14 on 2s, and Booker was 8 for 15. So, like, I mean, those guys took a lot of contested shots. Now, granted, some of them were, or a lot of them were against D'Lo and Gabe and Max and Austin. Like, they're able to pick their matchups and attack those guys and just shoot over them. But they did hit a lot of contested tough 2s. Now, that's part of, you know, partly their strength. So you just, like, I think it was to some extent just better offense beating solid defense in some regards. But obviously, the Lakers, like, it was interesting. I talked to AD about this after the game, after his scrum, and I was just like, what did you think of the switching? And he supported it and didn't feel like, you know, he was like, if we start blitzing, then they're going to start swinging the ball and they're going to get open 3s. And, like, you know, in theory, it's nice to try and get the ball out of their hands, but you know, he felt like they played solid defense within their switches, and they were trying to funnel those guys to certain spots on the floor where there was help. So he, you know, backed up JJ and was saying that he felt like that the switching it made sense, and you know, that maybe they, like, as JJ said, maybe they could have gone to blitzing like a possession or 2 earlier, but for the most part, he, you know, felt it made sense within the context of the fourth quarter. So I'm I probably disagree because I do think that they were able to manipulate the matchups. Similar, like we've seen this with LeBron so many times, right? Where LeBron will pick on the weakest defender and have that, whoever that guy's guarding, have that player come up and screen for him and then draw the switch. And he even did it tonight with Tyus Jones. They were picking on Tyus Jones a bit. But the Lakers, with their switching, were just giving up that switch way too easily. I felt like maybe they could have done scram switching or pre-switching. And, pre-switching is basically when you switch before the guy even gets into the play. So you would send, depending on who's the closest defender, you would try and get Rui or AD to switch into that. So I think there's ways the Lakers can be better defensively with handling that. But I think to my point earlier, I just think right now the bench has been so lackluster and inconsistent. And, Jackson, I think, has been solid overall. So this was not a good Jackson game, but it just was not a good game. Dalton, again, probably his worst game. So, this was probably an extreme version of how bad the bench can be, more so their floor. But it was a pretty low floor. And I personally think that was, the biggest thing of all. We can look at LeBron, even with LeBron didn't take a shot in the first 7 minutes during that stretch, and LA still went up 26-8. So they didn't really need, with the way their offense is humming, with the way AD's playing, with the way Rui's playing, with the way Austin's playing, they don't necessarily need LeBron to be LeBron every single night. There will certainly be matchups, and it certainly helps, but they can they can still be a really good team without LeBron being peak LeBron or last year's LeBron. But they need the bench to be better and more consistent. And I think JJ has to really take a look at some of these bench lineups. Off the top of my head, I don't have a great solution. One thing I've thought of is maybe going to Dalton instead of Max when he takes out LeBron midway through the first and third quarter, and kind of just mixing up the rotation a little bit. Now, JJ did mix it up tonight. He kept... I think he kept Max in, I want to say, or no, he kept Rui in, took AD out. He took AD out earlier than normal in the first quarter, kept Rui in, and then he started the second quarter with Max in Rui's place and put Max with that lineup of Dalton and D'Lo and LeBron and Jackson. But that group didn't work. It just didn't work. It got outscored in the beginning of the second, and then it got outscored again in the beginning of the fourth. So that was a nice attempt to, I think, try and put Max in a better lineup, because Max has been in some pretty bad lineups, and obviously part of that's on him, but there's 4 other guys on the court. I don't think that's solely on Max. So I think the Lakers got to continue to tinker and review the film. In my rewatch, I'm going to take notes and what I think the rotation changes should be, but as of now, I'd be interested to see Dalton go in for LeBron and play with Austin and D'Lo, then Gabe and Jackson come in shortly after, and then kind of go from there. But I'd like to almost see Dalton and Max's minutes flip a little bit, and also kind of stagger more Gabe and Max. I don't think Gabe and Max should be playing together with how both guys are struggling offensively. I think it kind of tanks LA's offense. So those would be some of the switches off the top of my head. I am going to dig into it more with the lineup data and film and have a better answer for you. But this was a winnable game. LA could have been 4-0. I think this could lead to some reevaluation with the rotation, reevaluation with some of the bench units, and also figuring out maybe ways to get LeBron some easier shots and get him going maybe earlier in games, because it's tended to be him getting going later. But that's my thoughts for the game. So let's get into the Q&A here. If you guys got any questions, I'm seeing here from Doggy, any word on Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Coloco? No. One funny thing was Rui was randomly wearing Christian Coloco's sandals post-game. I don't know why. I'm guessing, Coloco wasn't with the team anyway, but I just thought that I don't know if they ran out of sandals or whatever. It was funny. Question from Randon Vanucci. Hey, Jovan, during AD's postgame interview on Spectrum, Dan asked about JJ being pissed, and AD began to respond but stopped himself and said he would answer off camera. What did he say? I cannot answer that because that was something that did not want to be said on camera. So I will respect that and not relay it. But I think if you go back and kind of read through the lines, I think you can figure out what he was thinking. Question from George_Santiago. Thoughts on Max and Gabe? Do you sense they're overthinking while on court? Yes. I think that both guys, and I think the intentions are good with both guys. I think, Gabe and Max both are like team first guys. I don't think either one of those guys is like shot hunting necessarily. Like I think Gabe did some of that in Miami, but I think he's toned it down since being in LA, and he's just been lower in the pecking. Like in Miami, there was times where he was the number 3 guy during that playoff run. He's never been the number 3 guy in LA, whatsoever. So at best, he's like the number 7 guy offensively. So I think Gabe is played within his role, but I do think at times he's been a bit too passive, a bit too, to your question, like overthinking things. And I think the same thing with Max. Like that was a big thing with the coaching staff with Max his rookie season, was they just wanted him to, if you're open, like just be decisive and just take the open shot. And if they're closing out hard, then pump fake, drive, or just attack it and then make a play. And I think Max is still working on that processing with that part of his game. And I look at a guy like Rui as like, I mean, Rui is always trended more toward the shot happiness, right? Like Rui doesn't lack for confidence, and he's a very self-assured player. But I feel like JJ has simplified things for him, and JJ even talked about it in his post-game availability of like, for Rui, it's like if you're open, take the shot. If not, attack the closeout, crash the offensive glass, and cut along the baseline. And like those are his 4 offensive responsibilities. It's not playmaking. It's it's not bringing the ball up the floor. Like with Rui, it's very much he's a finisher, and it's threes, it's cuts, it's offensive rebounds, and it's driving and finishing at the rim. And like those are the things that the coaching staff wants Rui to focus on. And I think Rui, with stronger parameters and guardrails with his role, has excelled in that, and clearly he needs that structure in that direction. So I would say for Max and Gabe, if I'm on the player development staff or the assistant coaching staff, like I'm reviewing some of their shot pass decisions and really just because I think both guys, off the top of my head, there's at least one shot attempt or one situation for each guy where I'm like, just shoot the ball, just shoot it. And like you guys are both like Gabe was the starting guard on a team that made the NBA Finals. And granted, that was a wacky kind of postseason in the East, but still he was part of that, and it was a big part of Miami's success, that playoff run. And Max is a 40% catch and shoot guy through his first 2 years. Now, granted, it's lower volume, and he's hasn't played a consistent role yet, but Max has shot the ball well. And hit a 3 tonight, if I'm not mistaken. He did hit his sole 3 tonight. So like, I'd like to see more so even Max than Gabe. Like I just want, if Max has a sliver of space, and it's context, of course, is like it's a good shot. It's not too early in the shot clock. It's not like a pull up 3 in transition like he did in the preseason several times. I want him to take that. With Gabe, I think he's someone that has a bit more of a mid-range game, so I don't mind him like pump faking and maybe pulling up. Obviously, JJ doesn't really want them taking those types of shots. My bigger issue with Gabe, actually, now that we're talking about it, is like I don't love Gabe trying to finish in the paint or at the rim. I just think his floater and layup package aren't at a high enough level, at least currently. So like I feel like he ends up either like jumping and kind of like not knowing what to do, or he's like taking these contested shots that he's getting blocked or his shot altered, or he's just like not finishing through the trees in the paint. So that's more my issue with Gabe. But I think both guys can play like stop playing as tentative as they have. And if I'm the coaching staff and I'm going over the film with them, I'm keying in on several possessions, not even just in this game, but to start the season and saying like, this is what you guys should be doing, and just play confidently. And JJ's talked about it's going to be imperfect, you're going to miss shots, but like be decisive. And I think both guys have struggled to an extent with confidence and decisiveness. And I think it's playing timid has a downside, and I think you've seen it so far with Max and Gabe. OG Meatwad, anything going on with JHS? JHS is in the G League. JJ was asked about it pregame and just said that it was a decision that he made with Rob. So, I think it's like, obviously JHS is not going to be playing with the current, available players and the current rotation. So I think him getting reps and confidence at the G League level is important. So South Bay just started their training camp. JHS is going to be a part of that, and I think that's step in the right direction for him, just in terms of his development. And he's a guy that just needs a lot of reps. I think Maxwell Lewis needs a lot of reps, and I think Bronny needs a lot of reps. I think he's out here to probably be on the Cleveland trip, maybe even play in the Cleveland game for a stint in his hometown and have that moment with his dad. But I also think for Bronny, like, he missed some of the camaraderie last year in terms of just being away and with rehabbing and getting back. So like, I also think JHS and Maxwell Lewis at least have a NBA season under their belt of, like, yes, they were in the G League a lot, but they were also on road trips and around the team. Bronny as a rookie has yet to experience that. So I also think it's valuable for Bronny to be on an NBA road trip and see what that's actually like. Granted, he was basically on an NBA road trip at the preseason because the Lakers played 6 road games in the preseason. But like, it's different with this, and they still went back to LA several times during that stretch, and this is just 11 days on the road, 5 games. So I think that's a valuable experience for Bronny, just to observe up close. Like, this is what an NBA road trip's like. This is what it's like to kind of be in the bunker with my teammates. And then he afterward will most likely be going directly to the G League and playing in that opener on November 9th. So I think for Bronny, he's going to miss training camp, but I think in a way for him, having not experienced this yet, that this could be a very valuable experience for him. Kurt Affair, Jovan, why was there a lack of movement in this game and more ISO ball compared to the last games, personnel on court, or what the defense was giving us? I think it was a combination of both. I feel like, because I think the thing that, so I didn't even mention, like, to me, there was 3 major positives from this game. AD, 29 points, 15 rebounds, 3 blocks, another awesome game. He was a missed free throw away from 4 straight 30-point games, joining Jerry, Elgin, and Kobe as the only 4 Lakers to start a season that way. So that was unfortunate for him. Rui had 20 and 10. Rui has now had 18 or more points in 3 of the 4 games and 7 or more rebounds in 3 of the 4 games. Rui has been awesome. He took on the KD assignment, did about as well as one could physically do. That's not like an AD Wembanyama guy who can go stride for stride with KD. So like, I thought Rui competed really well on the defensive end. And then Austin, 23 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, had the 4-point play, had another big 3 late, and also a jumper, and like was making some big shots. So reminding me of the game 1 in Memphis, him game. Like he was just, they were going to the AR AD pick and roll and 2-man game, and it was really effective in creating shots for both AD as the roller on the left side. I thought there was a possession down there, he got fouled. Another thing was, like, I didn't think the reffing was great in this game. I thought the Lakers, like, Phoenix talked about it pregame that LA shot way too many free throws, and I kind of wonder if that was a part of the night in terms of LA not really getting calls. But that's its own thing. Like, I'm never going to use the refs as an excuse unless it's like a blown call, like the Boston game in the Garden when Jason Tatum fouled LeBron. That was egregious. But outside of that, I try not to blame the refs. So those 3 positives were to me really encouraging, but I say that to say that AD had 16 points in the first quarter, and for him to finish with 29, that to me it was a little bit like last season where they just go away from AD, and sometimes the guards just kind of galaxy brain it, overthink it, and try to do too much. And it's like, oh yeah, give the guy the ball who just played Yusuf Nurkic off the floor and also played Mason Plumlee off the floor, and I think they were just giving him rest. But like, if they have Ryan Dunn or Royce O'Neal or Kevin Durant out there guarding AD and having to double him and all this stuff, it's like, just give him the ball, right? So I felt like it was like shades of last season, and that's where I do partly put it on JJ in terms of like make sure the team is organized and structured and running effective actions to get AD the ball. But I also put it partly on the players, right? Like, because ultimately the players are the ones out there, and I think the guards can sometimes go away from AD for whatever reason. And I'm sure on some level it's AD as well, and him being a bit more aggressive, but I think he was also handling a significant workload with switching on to Booker and KD, and a lot of instances Bradley Beal as well. So like, I think I would put AD at like the least blame, because I do think AD's been aggressive, and even tonight, 24 shots, 6 free throws, so 12 for 24. I feel like he got fouled several times that he could have easily attempted 10, 12, 14 free throws instead of the 6. But you like to see the 24 field goal attempts, which was Rui had 18, Austin had 15. So like those three carried the offense for the most part. But I would say combination of player tendencies and like I think at their worst, the Lakers struggle with ball movement and off ball movement and stagnation. Like we have seen this from this group, that like when the offense is struggling, it's often, sometimes it's just missing shots, but often it's just like they stop running stuff, they stop screening as hard, cutting as hard. I thought you saw that at times, even with the starters. I felt like they were a little bit going through like a malaise, like there wasn't that sense of urgency that you saw the first 3 games. And maybe this will be a wake-up call, right? Like sometimes you need a wake-up call. Obviously you'd rather it not be in a loss, but like maybe they come out with a greater, and granted they did come out with a sense of urgency to start the game. Like I still felt like offensively a lot of it was getting out in transition and like getting easy buckets, but like in the half court I felt like even with the success they were having, it wasn't quite the level we had seen. But they were just so effective defensively that they were creating turnovers and getting out in transition, and that's how they scored a lot. Let's see, Dark Galaxy, thoughts on Vando or Wood closing the D'Lo Vincent spot if they look healthy? I would be more open to Vando closing in that spot. So you're saying Vando, Austin, Rui, LeBron, AD. I kind of like that lineup. It's a little funky. It's pretty big, obviously, because you got either Vando or Rui technically at the 2. I don't like Christian closing. I almost think Christian, I mean, it depends on the matchup, right? So if it's maybe a too big opponent, I'm probably fine with Christian closing, but I would say against the average team, like for tonight, right? Like you could have gone Vando on KD, Rui on Beal, or Austin on Beal, and then the other one on Booker. Probably Austin on Booker, Rui on Beal, LeBron. I guess it's like 80 on Plumlee or Royce O'Neal. Like I forgot if Plumlee closed. Like they were switching and they're going small and then going with Plumlee. So I don't remember off the top of my head, but I feel like Plumlee was in there to close. So yeah, I mean, I think you could have matched up with Vando out there instead of Vincent, and then they probably target Austin, but I think he holds up better than, he's bigger than Vincent, and I think he's a better defender than D'Lo, and he's going to fight and not let them get to their spots as easily. So yeah, I think that's an interesting closing lineup. Jonathan Rubio, who in your opinion is the Lakers' best option as the 6th man? I think it's Dalton. I still think it's Dalton. I said that after last game, that I think he's growing into becoming their most important bench player, and that's partly why he had a bad game or a rough game, at least offensively, and it was reflected in the bench performance and in the performance of the lineups while he was out there. Like I felt those 2 shifts that he had to begin the second and especially to begin the fourth, like those are where the game kind of slipped away from the Lakers. So, I mean, Dalton's a rookie. There's going to be a learning curve, and there needs to be patience and grace and understanding. So I don't. Dalton's like the bench player I blame the least tonight, but he did not have a good game, and the Lakers are becoming reliant on him to some extent, which is a good thing. It's a good problem to have, right? But when he has an off night, it certainly affects things. And he was 0 for 3, 0 for 1 on threes, and yeah, I think that was part of the bench issue. Let's see, I got a super chat from Kane Carter. You feel athletes struggle handling criticism these days? Oh boy, we could go another 45 on this one. Yes, I do. I get it, because as I talked about on the last post-game reaction, like I can struggle with criticism of if someone says something about me, or again, if it's about my opinion or my analysis or whatever, like that is fine. But if it's something about my appearance or like kind of more of like a personal attack, like that will upset me or make me sad, right? So we're all human, and I think social media and streaming and just content creation, and that's separate obviously from, I guess, entertainment, right? If you want to lump in like athletes to that, like entertainment is great, and it brings people joy and it brings connection. But with the way things are in 2024, it can also be very depressing or demoralizing or saddening, right? And so I think athletes are human. They might be taller and stronger and faster and make millions of dollars, but they are human. So when they deal with criticism, I think that's. But to me, what I think is fair game is like, I think you should be able to ask athletes direct questions as to like, why did you struggle tonight? What was it about their defense? What was going, like, if you're asking like a tactical analysis question, I feel like that's fair game. If you're attacking them and saying, you're mentally weak or something along those lines, that's when it's kind of becoming like more of a personal attack. And that's where I can understand certain athletes having issues with the way that questions are phrased. I also think sometimes, depending on because like I'll say, for the most part, like the core media, the beat reporters and the people who are traveling and are always around the team, like they kind of know how everybody operates in terms of the players, and they know like what questions work, what questions don't work. And for the most part, they ask pretty good and fair questions. And so it's typically like someone, a random reporter, either a local reporter on the road or a reporter in LA who's not really around the team. They come in and ask some like wild question or backhandedly like criticize a player, and then the player gets upset at all of us, and it's like, well, that's not like, that's not our fault that this person that we don't have control over what people ask. They got a credential and they came and asked you something that like they probably shouldn't have, or they didn't phrase it the right way. They don't have the same rapport and relationship with you. So that, it's a tricky part with the media player relationship. But look, and then I know like this can be a tough fan base, right? If you're struggling, you're gonna hear it. And even LeBron, I was getting flooded with tweets about LeBron and how poorly he was playing, and like that's LeBron, right? So if LeBron could get it, anybody could get it. And it's not just Lakers and Laker fans, it's any fan base, and not just even at the NBA, any sport. So I do think though, with the creation of athletes now having their own platforms, like that also kind of creates a divide where they can be like, hey, I'm going to go, like I would love to talk to D'Lo in the sense of like how he is on his podcast. Like, right. Like I think he gives great insights, and he's much more personable than he can come across in the media interviews with us, but that's not how he chooses to operate. It's more like, I'm going to save those answers and that kind of like, that my personality for my podcast. And that, like, you've seen other athletes do that. And that's kind of the way that this has gone a bit. So I think, and also sometimes like I'll say something, someone will say something, and then it gets aggregated, and then their brother or their cousin or their friend or their manager sees it, and then they tell the player, and then that player is like upset with you, and it's taken out of context or whatever. So there's a lot of ways that like it's become a trickier relationship in 2024 for athletes and fans, athletes and media, and I think part of it's social media interactions and aggregation and all that stuff. But it is what it is. Like I think athletes ideally, and I think for the most part, like most of the Lakers I've dealt with kind of have an idea of like, okay, this is like the beat reporters, and these are the people that we can trust, and these are the people that we see on a daily basis. And then maybe this is a different reporter or media person who like we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but if they ask a question, we kind of know it's like we're not going to take it out on the beat the way that some other athletes or some other teams do. So I would say that's one kind of thing, but it's a loaded subject, and I could go on for days about it. Okay, a couple more, then I'm going to wrap up. Fang Charlie, sup Jovan, hey from China, bro. What's up, man? Thank you for watching. I don't, no clue what time it is, but it is almost 1 a.m. here. So, yeah, I'm not even going to try and guess, but thank you for watching. Thanks for the superb content. People have been asking, have you got any updates for Vando or Wood? No updates for Vando or Wood. So Vando was supposed to be updated in 2 weeks, and that was like little over a week ago, like week and a half. So I think there's supposed to be an update on Vando at some point in early November, guessing, I guess, by the end of this trip. I'm not sure what, like the Lakers have been very mum on their injuries over the past couple of years. And even when, like I like going back to last year, I reported I was hearing Vando was going to be out. Then I got pushback from people close to the situation that said no, he's going to come back, and we expect him back by the end of the season. That I reported, okay, I'm now hearing that he's supposed to be coming back at some point, and then it got to that point and he never came back, and I was kind of like, well, I had it right the first time, and I trusted, and it was people very close to the situation, so I understood and I trusted it. But it was like, it's just been not great intel with that whole, with all the injury stuff. So I'm kind of almost staying out of it to an extent, because I'm like, I just, from Kendrick Nunn to Gabe Vincent to Jared Vanderbilt to Christian Wood, to now Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Wood this season, like Christian Coloco, like I'm just like, there's been so much uncertainty with all these guys in terms of timetable and updates, that I'm just kind of like, when I see Jared Vanderbilt unless JJ Redick says it pregame, and even then, I kind of want to see Jared Vanderbilt check into the game, and then I'll be like, okay, Vando's back. So I know that's not what the fans want to hear, but I also do, I don't want to give bad information, right? So I just haven't heard much. It's been a lot of just, quietness. Another super chat from Kane Carter. Thank you. What's one trade, wing or big wise, you'd make? I said Walker Kessler, and I saw that the Lakers had been interested in him, and that got aggregated. I felt like that had been out there. I guess not. But I think Walker Kessler, depending on the price, I would not give up 2 first-round picks for him. I would give up 1. And I think Walker Kessler would be a significant upgrade over Jackson Hayes. Well worth a first-round pick. And he's someone who could play 24 to 28 minutes a night as either a starter, and you go a little bit bigger. But, I mean, Rui's playing so well, I would not take Rui out of the starting lineup, so I will take that back. I would bring him off the bench, but I would play some 2 big lineups, and you could go stretches of a game where it's like Kessler, Davis, LeBron, Kessler, Davis, Rui, and even Kessler, LeBron, Rui, AD, LeBron, Rui, obviously starting and probably closing. But like, you can have those 4 guys, and even if you throw Vando into the mix, if you can keep him, like, you can have a front court that's basically just those 5 guys rotating. And I really like that front court and the different combinations you can come up with, because you got the firepower with AD, LeBron, Rui. You got the defense with AD, Kessler, Vando, and even Rui and LeBron when those two are locked in and within certain matchups. So like I really would I think Walker Kessler would be a great fit. Also has a good contract. Wing wise, it's a little trickier because I think with the way Rui's playing, I don't. If you can get like, do I think Jeremy Grant's a better player than Rui? Yes, but would I rather have Jeremy Grant making 28, 30 million or Rui making his 17 million? Rather have Rui making his 17 million. So I think Rui start and we'll see if he keeps it up and you know how he performs throughout the rest of the season, or at least the next couple of months as the Lakers are evaluating the roster. But I don't know. I honestly think I'd be looking for more so like a defensive guard, and I think the peak of that obviously would be Alex Caruso, but he's not available. But another like a DeAnthony Melton type, obviously he's not available unless maybe Golden State season goes south and they make him available for the right price. But that type of player, like I actually kind of think a defensive guard that matches up well next to like Austin or Dalton, and like that's kind of but like it has to be a certain caliber of defender. Like I think it would have to be an upgrade over Gabe and an upgrade over Max. And if you could get that type of guy, preferably someone who can be a secondary ball handler playmaker, but like they don't necessarily need to. They do have to be a plus shooter. So like a 6'3" to 6'5" 3-and-D guard, that's not an easy position to find necessarily, and it probably will cost you first round pick depending on who the guy is. But I kind of feel like to me the guard backcourt perimeter defense has been a bigger issue than the wing perimeter defense. And again, with the way that like LeBron and AD are going to have their roles at the 4 and the 5, and I think with the way Rui's playing and with the way that Vando can plug in defensive holes off the bench, I'm less concerned with like the 3 and 4 spots. It's mainly like backup center and probably like another defensive guard that's like that's just better and more reliable than Gabe or Max. So that would be my current target list, I guess, in terms of like the position archetype. Obviously, if Rui regresses and does, starts to kind of float a bit and isn't playing with the same level of aggression, isn't rebounding as well, isn't shooting as well, then I think it's a different conversation in December or January. But as of right now, with the way Rui's playing, I think he's been awesome, and I would not mess with that. I think LA's found something really unique with his ability to, just run the cut along the baseline and find the crevices within a defense and really just punish smaller front courts, because basically every other front court is smaller than the Lakers. Young Claire, thank you for the super chat. Is Lonzo Ball a potential trade target? I've not heard Lonzo Ball, but he does fit the profile of the type of player I was just describing in terms of a defensive-minded guard who can shoot, and he's obviously a higher level ball handler and playmaker. So, I mean, realistically, I think he's probably on the high end of like that type of player that the Lakers could realistically acquire. Now, can he stay healthy? There's obviously he has a big contract, so there's several factors there that would go into that. But I've not heard anything on Lonzo Ball, but I do think if he can stay healthy for the next couple months and prove that he's getting back to who he was, I think that's the exact type of player that the Lakers could use. Next one from Gray Raj. I think Bruce Brown fits despite the contract. Yeah, I think Bruce Brown, he is also coming off arthroscopic knee surgery, so I would like to see him healthy and back and just what that looks like. especially with the Lakers' recent track record with Gabe and Kendrick Nunn and some of the knee stuff. I'd be a little careful with dealing with knee stuff. So you never want to trade for an injured player. So for Bruce, I would want at least like a month of him back to form. And I don't think he's been back yet, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't been tracking that situation closely, but Bruce Brown's another one. I think Lonzo and Bruce Brown, off the top of my head, are like two of the better candidates that would fit that. And Bruce can even play some 3, even some 4. Like he played that in Denver. So he's not been as good as he was in Denver, but he's also only a year removed. So I think maybe within the Lakers system, playing with JJ, there's a lot of creative ways you can use him. All right. We're about to hit the hour mark. So I'm going to do a couple more and then I will wrap. Steve Stevenson, is Nickeil Alexander-Walker a realistic target? I would say probably not, just because like maybe if Rob Dillingham pops and they're obviously different players, but it does feel like Minnesota has like got their top 8 with the starters plus DiVincenzo, Naz Reid, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And for a team that considers itself a contender, I don't know if you really mess with that. He's one of the best bench guards defensively in the league. So I would be interested in him if I'm the Lakers and he becomes available, but I feel like when you're dealing with it's rare to do like a contender swap unless they're really high on like Max Christie and then maybe there's something to be done there, but I don't think they end up trading him. Calvin Lee, Jovan, how do you feel about this loss? So I did cover that at the beginning of the stream in case you missed it. In 30 seconds, I'll just say I think it was a bad loss, and I think the Lakers probably should have won this game. At the same time, I'm not going to overreact to it. I do think that they had obviously 3 relatively close games to start the season. They could have lost one of them and been 2-1 entering this game. So I feel like 3-1 through these first 4 games feels about right. I think LeBron had an worst shooting performance in 17 years. I don't think that's going to happen again. AD, they went away from him. That's something that the coaching staff has identified. It's something that players are talking about. Like they need to keep AD involved. And the bench had arguably their worst performance of the season. So a lot of things went wrong. And even so, they were in a 1-possession game with one of the best teams in the West on the road. And like that's, I guess, the optimistic take. The pessimistic take is like the bench has been a problem to start the season. LeBron has really only had one good game and like really like a good like stretch in that game. Otherwise, kind of been below his typical standards. And yeah, so those would be, I guess, my 30-second thought on the game. Intelligent Man. Do you think the Lakers can win the chip this year? It's a good question. I said on Sean Davis's podcast that I would have given LA like I want to say this was entering the season, like a 0.5% chance, which like sounds very low, but when you actually break down, if you're putting all 30 teams within a percentage, like Boston's probably 30 to 40% of that, right? Like OKC is probably 20-25%, and then you start going down the list of where the teams kind of rank percentage wise. So like there are teams that have a 0% chance, but I had the Lakers and that was as constructed. Obviously, if they make a move, that changes my opinion. I would say I have them a bit higher, like maybe a few percentage points now, but I still think it's only 4 games, and the biggest thing for me is just the health, and that's been LA's biggest thing for the last few years. Is last year they were healthy. Like when they're healthy, I have confidence that this is a 50+ win team and they could compete with just about anybody. I still would have them behind OKC and Boston, but I think they could beat just about anybody else. And that to me has been confirmed by their start to the season. But can AD and LeBron stay healthy? It's just as simple as that. And like those guys have dealt with injuries over the last 2 years. And last year they're healthy, and we saw how good they looked when they played the right lineups and they did smart things as as a team. And then the previous season they went to the conference finals. So like I think there is a pathway for the Lakers to win the title, but to me it's got first and foremost, like they have to be healthy, which is a variable you cannot predict, and especially with LeBron about to be 40, AD entering his early 30s, like it's tough based on their injury history. But also I think it probably requires a move to like the bench has been concerning. That's been so far my biggest concern overall. So Vando and Christian Wood coming back will help. I don't think it solves everything. I still think you have an offensive problem with the bench. And I think if LA can get a better backup center and a better guard and maybe move, like maybe you get a better defensive guard and you can somehow keep D'Lo, or maybe Dalton pops or whatever, you figure it out. But like, I think they need more depth and they have a couple of holes in the rotation. Dark Galaxy, do you have the Lakers over the Nuggets? Currently, yes, I do. Denver in a playoff series, that's tough. I think it's probably a 7-game series right now. I mean, Jokic is just, I still think he's the best player in the world, but they really miss KCP, and the Russ situation has gone about as expected for anyone who has been paying attention to that situation over the past few years. It's not been good. Ramo, Ao, DeSumo, a good target. Yeah, that's like, I wouldn't have him on the higher end of like the Bruce Brown, Lonzo if Lonzo bounces back, but like a more medium target that would suffice. Yeah, I think so. Ron's key, Walker, Kessler, and Sexton would be a perfect fit. I agree. Nathan Batista, Jovan, I'm interested to know how JJ is utilizing his assistants on the bench. How are the assistants molding JJ's coaching philosophy? He is delegating a lot to his assistants, and I think that's a good thing, because I think obviously JJ's coming in with not any coaching, head coaching experience at the NBA level. So I think he's brought in, between Nate McMillan and Scott Brooks, that's 42 years of head coaching experience. And are those guys maybe a little bit bland schematically and not the most like modern coaches? Yes. But we've seen the Lakers have ran a lot of modern principles. Greg St. Jean, who was in with the Lakers during the championship season, but also in Dallas and Phoenix, and part of some successful offenses there, has been basically the offensive coordinator. So I would, to my knowledge, JJ has been delegating a lot, but obviously he's got the final say. And I think so far it's looked pretty good. And each coach, for the most part, outside of Scott and Nate, has like the several guys that they work out and that they practice with. Like, I feel like Nate and Scott are a little bit more like the sage veterans in the room with the wisdom. Nate has a big say in the defense, and yeah, so I would say like it's gone. I think it's gone well, and they all seem to be getting along, and everyone has a voice. And yeah, so I don't like that. Could be maybe a longer segment at some point, is diving more into the coaching staff. But I think okay, I see. Kane Carter, another super chat. I appreciate you, so I'm going to answer this. Outside the Lakers experience, how do you view Russ? You are you've been asking some tough ones, man. Russ is obviously one of the best. He's a top 75 player. He's an MVP. I just think, like it's kind of similar to Allen Iverson, though Iverson led a team to the finals. Russ made the finals, but he was, I would say, a distant second to Kevin Durant in terms of like production, contribution. Like KD was clearly the best player on that Thunder team. And even during some stretches of that run, James Harden off the bench was better than Russ. Now, like in the aggregate, Russ was better. But point being, like, I think Russ is a complicated guy just because he's done some historic things, and he clearly has a certain, like, he's clearly very talented, very skilled, and plays with a certain verve and energy. And like, he's arguably the most athletic guard of all time. I think it's him, it's Derrick Rose, it's John Morant. Those are like the three guys off the top of my head, with just that raw speed and athleticism and vertical ability. But at the same time, I think we've seen the ceiling to Russ being your best player or even your second best player. And it's one thing if you have like prime or entering his prime Kevin Durant and also James Harden next to him and Serge Ibaka and like this really talented young group. But Russ, I just think it comes down to like Russ's jumper has always been problematic. And I think to a larger extent, more so his decision making. And it's like, he could have the 30-point triple double, but he's probably going to shoot you out of it in the fourth quarter or, have turnover issues. And like, in some ways it kind of reminds me of D'Lo, of like in the regular season, he'll put up the big numbers. He'll even have the big shots, the big plays. And like, it looks great. But when it comes to the playoffs, Russ, if you look at his numbers, they continually decrease. He had a horrible postseason with the Clippers, and it just feels like he never accepted his limitations as like some of the stuff he did with the Clippers, I felt like he could have done with the Lakers in terms of being like, I'm going to lean into my defense and my cutting, and I'm going to be like a team guy. And like, he never, he tried it, but if anyone paying attention, it was like he would do it for a couple of possessions, a quarter, a half. It was not consistent of him buying in and trying to be more of a role player. He still fancied himself a star. And I think those days are long gone. And but at the same time, it's like what made Russ so special was also that same mentality. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword of the thing that made him great is also the thing that's kind of limiting his ability to get over the hump and like, be the best player on a title team or be the second best or even the third best. Like now, I think if he ever wins a title, it's almost certainly going to be him as like fifth best at best, but probably even like on Denver, I would not say, he's their sixth or seventh best player. And that in and of itself is kind of a problem, but so Russ is just a complicated guy. Obviously, the Clipper situation didn't go well either, but the Lakers situation didn't go well. Would say he's not my favorite player that I've covered, and we did always see eye to eye. He did always like what I had to say, but he did play well. So I don't know how else to cut it. And we saw what immediately happened after the Lakers traded him. They went on a run to the conference finals, and last year looked really good. This year looked really good. Clippers have looked better without him, even losing Kawhi. Like it's just, yeah. So he's arguably got the most complicated legacy of like any star because the numbers have always been there, but the results have not. And I think I forgot who said it. Something like he's played, I think his team's like 13-31 since KD left. So in the playoffs, his record in the playoffs since KD left is like 13-31, which is just like that just showed like when he's been the best or second best guy since KD left, his teams just don't perform well outside of the one Rockets year where they made the second round, then lost to the Lakers in the bubble. Okay, but that's enough about Russ. I did not expect that. Doggy, would you start Vando over D'Lo? No. I think the one I've come around to, and I heard Anthony Irwin and Pete Zayas discussing this, is Dalton. I kind of like the idea of Dalton and Austin in the backcourt and D'Lo coming off the bench. And like you could bring out, so when Max comes in for LeBron, you could bring in D'Lo, and then you have your 5 best offensive players on the court together: D'Lo, Austin, Dalton, Rui, and AD, and you have like that group for 2 or 3 minutes. Then you bring in Gabe, then you bring in Jackson, then you bring in LeBron, I guess for Dalton or for Rui to kind of close the quarter, and maybe you bring back Austin or whoever you take out between. I guess you wouldn't be taking out D'Lo because you just brought him back. You take out Dalton or Austin, you bring that guy back in also to close the quarter, and then you kind of go with like the second quarter group that you've been using. But that to me, like I kind of like. Dalton still gives you the shooting because that like the biggest concern for me of going from D'Lo to Gabe or Max. Obviously, it's a defensive upgrade, but the shooting right now and just like how much of an offensive downgrade it is, I think has the chance to like disrupt what has made that starting lineup so great, which I think they've punched above their weight defensively, but like offensively, it's like, who do you guard? Like you have 5 guys who can drop 15 plus, 20 plus any night, and they're just such a tough lineup to match up with. And if you put Dalton in there for D'Lo, you kind of keep that same offensive identity. Obviously, he's a different player than D'Lo. I'm not saying they're similar, but if you're already like they're kind of using D'Lo in some ways to Dalton, or in similar ways to Dalton in terms of like making him more of a catch and shoot guy, more of a guy who's cutting, more of a guy who's moving around, and like Dalton could do those things. And then when D'Lo comes in, it could be more of, okay, now he's the co-pilot with LeBron, or he has his own unit with AD, and he's bringing the ball up and he's getting his usage. So between Dalton, Max, and Gabe, at first I thought it was going to be Max. That has not obviously materialized. Then I was like, maybe Gabe, because the Gabe-Austin combo is good. JJ obviously trusts Gabe. He's been closing games with Gabe. He's closed 3 of the 4 games with Gabe over D'Lo. But now I'm kind of getting back to like Dalton could do the off-ball stuff that they're asking for D'Lo. Basically play the same role in terms of just like catch and shoot, run around screens, cut, screen for your teammates, and then like defensively it's a bit of a problem, but it's also a bit of a problem with D'Lo out there. And at least Dalton's a good 2-3 inches bigger than D'Lo. He's more athletic than D'Lo, and I don't think he's been like worse than D'Lo defensively. So I think he's actually probably been better. It's close. So I'm actually leaning toward Dalton starting if I was going to move D'Lo to the bench, but I think they're probably going to stick with it. My then next thing that I mentioned earlier on the show is just, okay, now bring Dalton in instead of Max and rejigger the rotation that way. But I've gone far too long. I appreciate you guys, late night gang. We got over 200 in here. But we're at the 117 mark, and I still got some work to do. I also got a flight to catch in the morning going to Cleveland for that. Should be a fun game and another nice test for the Lakers. So I want to say thank you guys so much for listening and for watching. And I will be back on Wednesday night. Also, I'm hoping to record tomorrow. I do have a crazy travel day. I'm basically flying all day due to connections and it not being easy to get from Phoenix to Cleveland. So I'm not getting into Cleveland until like almost 10 p.m. Eastern time. So I might have a late show go up tomorrow, but be on the lookout for that. If not, I will be back on Wednesday with a post-game reaction to that. Hopefully I'll have my camera figured out, but I think the audio is better. I think I figured it out finally with my mic on here. So thank you guys again so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back later in the week. I will talk to you then.